Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this panel. This is a Lead Dev online panel discussion created in partnership with Harness. The discussion will last about 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelists will head over to the Lead Dev Slack, which you have in the resources right now. If we don't finish the questions live, it will be in the panel Q&A, hashtag panel Q&A channel. For those of us joining live, you can join via the link in the chat. It's a really great community of engineering leaders supporting and learning from each other. And for those that are trying, aspirational, take that step from Staff Plus to engineering leader, we need good leaders in the world. So we also have time to answer questions live, so please submit them through the Q&A feature on Zoom. We have questions planned, but it's always more interesting when you bring them, so thank you so much. Today, we're talking about this idea that, especially at the speed of AI, we have to set up guardrails and the process that will ensure software quality without burning out our teams. So when guardrails are in place and they're good, they don't create breaks in the system. They help people go faster. So we want that as much as possible. Every engineering leader is seeing a lot more code per engineer with bigger PR size, with less time reviewing the code. So they're using AI to review the changes, and that changes the risk of the profile of each company. And more than ever, we have a lot of warnings and signals, but we need the right signals and feedback loops in the right places. So as we get started, we actually have a poll to start. And my glasses were needed to zoom in that. And the question is, in the last 3 months, what percentage of code do you think you've actually written? And yeah, I'm gonna leave that up for everyone on the call. And then I would like to, while we're doing that, I would like to ask our esteemed guests to introduce themselves. By the way, I'm Jennifer Riggins. I'm everyone's freelance technology journalist favorite, and including for Lead Dev and other sites. So I'm really happy to be here. Testa, do you want to go first? Introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me join with the conversation. I'm Tacita Morway. I'm a VP of engineering for a company called Applause, where we test technology. We bring together the best of human capabilities with a community of 2.5 million human testers, and we augment that with automation. So we can tune both. We ourselves, our company, our service is a guardrail. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. But as a VP of Eng, I live there in support of engineering, product, IT, the whole team, making sure we are working well together and building the right thing.
That's great. Thank you so much, Balazs. You are on mute.
Sorry, my name is Balazs Barna. I'm an engineer. I didn't have a choice. My father is also a software engineer, so I've been coding since I was 8 years old. I've spent all my career in the financial services industry. I joined Wise 9 years ago. Back then it was TransferWise. Joined when the company was 500 people. Now we are 8,000. We have 18 million customers. And we power. We make money. We make money movement the most efficient between countries, continents, and I'm currently leading the U.S. engineering teams.
Fantastic, thank you. And Rohan?
Hey everyone, just to close this out, I'm Rohan. I'm a product manager here at Harness, and a lot of my focus is around making sure that we are building developer tools and developer platforms that allow developers to ship code confidently with quality. And this is something that I've been doing even before I was at Harness. A lot of my experience has been PMing products in the quality and error monitoring and code quality space. So this is a space I'm super passionate about.
Okay, great. And just to say, because in this day and age, this is really exciting and impressive for everyone, but everyone on this call's teams are hiring right now. So you have in the chat, but you can also Google these companies. there are jobs, and we want to make sure if you're not looking, you are sharing with people who are. So thank you very much for all three of you for sharing that information. And now let's see the polls. So again, it was in the last 3 months, what percentage of code do you think you've actually written? And the answer choices were about 5% of code, 10%, 25%, almost half don't use AI for code in production, which it's really split across the board. About a third only use AI to write or use themselves, their human brain, for 5%. Another 13% use it for 10% of the code, about 21%, or like a fifth of our audience, maybe about a quarter of the time we're writing code. 13% still said about half of the code. And then I found this very interesting, just over a fifth also don't use code. You don't use AI for code in production, which I'm guessing they're more in the heavily regulated, restricted space. But that actually makes me want to ask you, Blas, because I think you're in the most restricted of the three. What percentage do you think people on your team use AI to write code, or what percentage are they writing code now?
I think that our adoption is almost complete. Like I think that it would be close to 100% of engineers who use AI in one way or another to write code, whether it's to write their tests, whether it's to write production code. But I'm pretty sure that almost everybody in the org is using it.
And is that code going to production, if I may ask? Like,
Yes,
like,
absolutely. We have the full suite of tools we use. We have Claude Code, Codex, and every other major tool available inside the org. And we trust our engineers to choose what's best for them.
okay. And then did you onboard that in guardrails? I have so many questions. That's very interesting because obviously you have to comply with a lot of different countries' regulations as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things when it comes to AI is that you have a really good testing harness. So it's almost inevitable that humans and even AI is going to make mistakes. And what you want to do is you don't want that faulty code to go into production. And the best way to do that is to really build and invest into your testing harness so that it catches the problems before you release them. And there are obviously like a lot of other like amazing technical tools that you can use to once if an issue is in production, then you catch it as fast as possible.
Okay. What about your experience in your team, Tasta? What percentage of the code they're writing is AI generated versus human generated? We haven't come up with the right term, but I kind of like the robot versus human clarification.
It really varies from individual to individual and project to project. So I don't feel good putting any kind of number out there. That would be a benchmark that changes week to week based on what we're working on. There are certain parts of the code base that AI is really well suited for. There's certain projects that's very well suited for, and so we're going to do a lot more there. And there's other areas where like, okay, the complexity here is actually requiring more manual effort from the humans. And so we tried to be, and 100% of the team is using it. We're using AI on 100% of the work we're doing in some way or another. It's just the actual amount of code that we're shipping that's just us versus AI generated. That's going to evolve based on the demands of the moment.
Yeah, that's true. And are there certain types of features or certain departments or roles that maybe you find are not using less AI, but maybe using it less as the final production product, or where you feel more sandbox experimental?
I think that one of the clearest, there's several different things that would impact that, but one of the clearest ones, there might be an area of the code base, and a company's been around for 19 years. Some of the areas of the code base are pretty tenured and getting a little creaky. And we want to make really good judgment calls about how much we're investing in that. And that's an area of the code, an area where I want the seasoned engineers making a good judgment call with AI sitting right next to them, but they understand the business, they understand where we're headed, they understand the work that's coming, and can make a better judgment call independently and sort of how far to refactor that kind of thing. And sometimes it actually would take more to, you could certainly get your AI to do that. You could absolutely take the time to teach your Claude bot, here's the things I care about right now, and send off your little army of agents to go do the stuff. Sometimes it's actually faster just to have the human make those judgment calls, be like, this part of the code base, we just don't even need to touch, versus this part of the code base, we need to actually sunset. Then that's one of those places where you're going to see more human intervention versus we're building out a new feature. We want to learn from our end users really quickly. This is a fresh area of the code base or a really well-documented endpoints that we're interacting with. When there's really clear handshakes between different parts of the system, that's an area where it's really well suited for running with your AI friends.
Fair enough. Yeah. So Rohan, I guess you may have like a feeling for within Harness, but also maybe you have any statistics from your customers as well of how much are they going all in on AI?
To echo, I think what Tacit and Ash have said, like I think all engineers are using AI agents to do stuff, and I mean I would go as far as to say that it's not just limited to engineers. Like I myself in my job, not just at Harness but at other places I've worked at, well, at least while LLMs were still a thing, I've been able to use LLMs to do some rapid prototyping, some like mocks and design work. I think the key through line here is one around to what degree do you want to have accountability and like manage risk around something that is essentially non-deterministic. Put something out there. So it's like it's a risk reward thing. And so prototypes are cheap. And so like at Harness, like even engineers are encouraged to prototype something and put something out there just to validate stuff with customers or with product. But when it comes to stuff that has like high impact or high blast radius, we want to make sure that there is some human in the loop, whether it's like and that can range from like humans or teams themselves like own all of the responsibility of like writing code from scratch or shipping it, which is increasingly admittedly becoming rarer, to whether you're just like reviewing it or whether you're just monitoring the impacts in like a sandbox environment before pushing it. And I guess like to close out, what I would also add is like you can have AI help not just with writing. Like there's more to software development in my view than just like writing code. It's like you push something, you review it, you test it, you pull it back, and then you like iterate on it, and then you ship. And I think agents play a role in all of that. And therefore, I think teams, depending on what they're trying to do, will want to use agents differently in different parts of that lifecycle.
No, I think that's very true. So that brings kind of to the next polling question, which is how confident are you that you're building the right thing? So I'll let the audience answer that. Thank you for your participation. And then I ask each of you, Rohan, if you want to start for this one, how do you define quality in the age of AI?
Yeah, good question. I don't think the answer to that has ever changed. Because I mean, with humans writing code or with agents writing code, at the end of the day, quality software is something that works, does what it says on the tin, and does so reliably in a performant way, and just makes the world a better place. And wow, I mean, going one level deeper than that combined version of events, like the things that you measure around quality software, which is like there's like a traditional set of like metrics that you use to kind of evaluate software, like to what degree is it maintainable, to what degree does it have like vulnerabilities, to what extent is it well tested. All of that I think largely remains the same. and I think will continue to remain the same. The other elements are also to what extent does it solve the needs of the customer or the needs of why it was built in the first place. Even that will, to my view, continue to remain the same in the age of AI. I think what will change is one, like we are also moving away from like working on things that are deterministic to things that are somewhat probabilistic. So you'll want to measure to what extent something that is probabilistic or non-deterministic continues to be stable.
Oh,
And I think that's something we can talk about. But I think the other thing is that because like the end of the day, AI is a tool, and so like the way you measure the effectiveness of that tool to maintain quality will also be a thing that increasingly gets talked about in the same breath as quality. So yeah, like that's what I think about stuff.
okay.
That's what I think about quality in the AI space.
Fantastic. I see you nodding along. What are you going to add to that?
I agree totally that like the definition of quality hasn't changed. What is different is what's more readily at risk and what the opportunities are. So there's a massive opportunity to learn faster from our end users, the people, the humans we're impacting by building something that we put in their hands. And so for me now, part of quality is did we get that? I guess more it's like a measure of success. Like, did we get that thing out into people's hands fast enough to learn and bring that feedback loop in fast enough? So it's not just building the right thing, but did we learn fast enough? That's part of my sort of like quality success metric right now. Did we learn fast enough? Did we learn the right things? That's on the opportunity side that AI presents. The risks are around potential for harm, for bias, like you were just saying, sort of that stability, reliability of a non-deterministic thing going to a probabilistic thing. We all know how inherent bias is in AI, like how is that showing up? So that was always a bar of quality, but now it really needs to be looked to carefully, intended to carefully and thoughtfully and invested in a different kind of way because the risks are greater. The bias was always there, but now that can populate and propagate much faster than ever before. So it's a greater risk and a greater opportunity. And those two areas change sort of how I prioritize what we're measuring and looking for that bar of quality. It doesn't change what I was looking at it for.
Okay. Balazs, for WISE, is there anything to build on that?
I very much agree. How I like to think about quality is our ability to earn more customer trust with every single release that we do. And I think what changes with AI is that velocity in quality also matters, because everybody in the industry is going to be faster. They are putting out more features, they're improving convenience, they're improving the foundations of the product. So you have to keep up, and you have to do it in a way that there is no downside to your customers. And this is especially important in the financial services industry.
Yeah, I think trust is where
Yeah.
we've all lived through when that trust was really broken. So we need it more than ever. So I think that is a really important thing. I appreciate that. I would like to read our poll results, if that's okay. And this is no judgment. This is hard, and this is a gut feeling in a way, even though the answer it doesn't have to be. How confident are you that you're building the right thing? Nobody said not really. Good for y'all. About half said sometimes. Very honest answer. About a quarter said a gut feeling, but I think so. And we're not negating that is a real thing, but we found out last year that developers felt they were much more productive with AI tools, and they were actually decreased in productivity by like 19%. So perception is both qualitative and quantitative matter. And then almost a quarter of our participants have data to prove that, yes, they're building the right thing. I think that was a fascinating response and breakdown, so we know where our esteemed audience is. So, yeah, how do you figure out not only if you're building the right thing, but like how do you set up an environment to make sure, to help aid that, to make sure you're taking mindful risks and making good judgment calls and still having like some autonomy? How do you elucidate the risks you're taking? I want to hear about how y'all do this. Balazs, I see you nodding along first, so I'm going by nods.
Yeah, I think it's there are a lot of really important things in this. This is all about culture, right? How do you build a culture where people are going to take risks, but those are calculated risks, and those are going to enable you to move fast, learn fast, and build an amazing product. And I think one of the best things about the Wise engineering culture is this blameless post-mortem culture. So when you make a mistake as an engineer, it's a terrifying thing. But when how we deal with that though is we have this blameless post-mortem culture, which is about writing up exactly what happened, and you send that document to the whole company, and everybody can see that and can comment on it. And what you will really learn is how to avoid that the next time, and nobody's going to point the finger. And that is, I think, a super important element of the culture that is going to enable people and empower them to take calculated risks, move fast, and if something breaks, like, learn and move on.
Okay. Asta.
I can jump in. Yeah. So again, a little bit. So what we were talking about earlier, some things just haven't actually changed on this front too much. And so I'm looking at, like, you want your teams to understand the why behind anything they're building. And the more everybody understands the why and is close to the why, then you're going to be making better judgment calls in the solutions they're coming up with and how they're building those. That's nothing new. But again, I looked at the opportunities that we now have in front of us that we didn't before. And we use AI to, like, your AI is involved heavily in generating the specs, turning specs into tickets that are consumable by human or agents that can go off and do a thing. Now, that saved a lot of time for engineers and our product folks and all the people who contribute in that part of the workflow. Rather than using that time savings to just go and start off more work and more threads and different things just because you can, trying to get us to invest that time back into getting direct access with our engineers to the end user, to the business stakeholder, get them more of the story behind what we're facing, what we can solve for, and just bring up that really strong product mindset. So the extra time doesn't go into, like, cool, now we can add more to your to-do list. Instead, it's going, we're going to give you more context. So you really can, like, the hackathons now are going to be unhinged because people are going to have such richer context because we've had the time freed up to create space for that learning and those connection points across different functions and roles.
What do you mean by that, though? Like, are they working with, how are they getting access to customers? What does that mean?
It can take lots of different forms. It can, if we have a great sort of design partner customer, we can get them in the room directly with the engineers. In the past, I've hosted hackathons where, like, customers have come in and been part of that. One company, we blended customers with engineering and product to actually run a little hackathon. There's getting the sales team or the customer facing folks to come and spend time with our team to share, here's what I'm seeing, here's recordings of calls. It's just creating that connective tissue, creating those opportunities of connection. We're really lucky that what we're building, we use internally. The same thing that our customers benefit from, we benefit from. So I can also just, like, Slack some of my colleagues and be like, hey, you want to spend an hour with some of our engineers over here because we're working on something that impacts your world and we want to shadow you some. So just, again, more of the same stuff that you could do before. We just have more time to actually set that up and do it.
And then are you also, I'm just curious, because especially like these customer conversation, like transcripts, et cetera, so are you feeding them into, like, your context of your agents? Is it something that is a resource that your engineers can then feed into the agents they're building or deploying?
We certainly can. No, there's a lot of guardrails and care taken around data privacy, like just sort of it. We are really thoughtful about what we're doing, what information we're sharing, where and how that's being used. But we absolutely can do that. We can make synthetic versions of a customer, and so we can interact with that and be like, hey, this is a thing I'm building. Here's the UI I just gave you. What do you think about this? Is the problem. You have these 5 problems that I know about. I tackled this one. Are you mad at me? Or are you happy? And then so there's all sorts of things. Now we're early stages in some of this right now. The other piece that comes in with being able to do this is having your team set up to own particular outcome area or care about a particular kind of user or customer. And when your team is focused in that way, it helps them start building up those relationships with different roles, different users, whatever. So like the wheels are already greased to get that feedback loop and to get that direct contact.
That's great. That's really interesting. Rohan, what are some of the guardrails that you put in place to help both people and agents move faster, but still make mistakes?
So I think that also like closely ties to what we were talking about earlier, which was around like good guardrails. What we have seen at Harness are actually those that enable engineering teams to like do the thing and do the thing really well, right? And I think one of the things that, just to build off like the previous conversation as well, is that like what the use of AI tools has really allowed is that it's democratized product building across like teams across, so like across the org. So like a lot of smaller teams, I guess, can work or quickly validate or invalidate like new business opportunities a lot faster than you could. You can use quality tooling to kind of, or smarter quality tooling to kind of build guardrails that like can adapt to the kind of things that you're trying to solve. What I mean by that is like something that is just a prototype or an idea, or that is only going to impact a certain subset of customers that I can then control using like a release strategy or whatever, does not need to be treated the same way as production grade software that is like dealing with, that is like the backbone of like 10,000 customers paying you millions of dollars, right? And I think intuitively most teams understand this. The challenge then becomes, how do you allow for flexible guardrails for teams to be in like experimentation mode versus like production mode? And I think like this is a conversation that we're thinking deeply about at Harness. Like we know if there are teams that if there's stuff that if we want to take wild bets and like fail really fast, we should be comfortable limiting the blast radius, but also relaxing some of the quality guardrails that exist so that like things don't go south. The next step is thinking about how we can reduce that intelligently. And so like in practice, what that looks like is like if I'm working on like something that is an experiment, you have like a release strategy that is like driven by feature flags based on like the maturity of the service that that you're building. In this case, this would just be like something that is like almost like throwaway code or whatever. You would try to make sure that your quality gates around your code coverage, around like static analysis or like security, like you dial that a lot lesser than you would like on production software. And so I guess like the through line here is like we're thinking about like quality guardrails is something that ratchet up and ratchet down depending on like the goals of what your team is trying to accomplish. Previously that can take a while, but now like if you have all of your signals interconnected, you can do that on the fly.
Okay. What about, I really, I'm glad Balazs came back but I realized it's not on screen. So I will get you back on screen, Balazs. But in the meantime, if you can tell us about how you are doing progressive delivery at, a financial services company where you can't really like give different results to different people.
Yeah. I think that just to connect to what Rohan was saying, I think it's really important for every fast moving team to differentiate between tasks where it's very easy to reverse the situation, and also to understand when a decision is going to be very hard to reverse, so it's almost irreversible. And typically when our teams deal with situations where they want to do an A/B test, and then like really quickly release something, like change a button, or like move something around in the product, you don't really want like a heavy process to stop them from doing that. Obviously the foundations like still have to be there, like good testing, observability in production, understanding precisely what can go wrong, what is the blast radius. But then you want to be like really quick, and most of the work that we do is actually has to be done quickly. You want to move fast, you don't want to waste time. But then when there is a bigger architectural decision that is happening, then you want to slow down. Then you really want to make sure that there is alignment on the approach that you're taking. So, for example, at Wise, what we do is we have an RFC process, which stands for ready for comment. And our engineers write up a document which outlines like why they're choosing a particular decision or solution, what were the alternatives that were considered, and staff engineers and principal engineers are opining in, and we really slow down intentionally, so then we make the right decision and then we can move fast.
Okay. Pasta, let's talk about like now, with all this instrumentation and these guardrails, there's always been ops burnout. Let's call it what it is. And now everyone is getting signals. So how do you, especially when AI can doing signals and you need to know what the AI is doing, but like there's just so much going on and a huge amount of code. I think more apps will be created in the last year and the next 2 years than in the previous 3 decades. How do you not go crazy with the amount of signals out there? How do you create quality of signal?
Working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding, like, I just want to make sure I'm answering the question you're getting at here of like, we can build anything real fast and we can get it out into the world real fast. And all of those things can have all of the instrumentation in place, and we can have all the dashboards about adoption and all the stuff. And it's like, okay, but wait, what we're doing, why do we exist? What are we here to accomplish today? That kind of like all of that kind of signal. So this is where going back to the basics of getting close to your market, getting close to your customer, getting close to your users. What is actually needed? What is the market opportunity? You overlay that with what your customers are saying they want, what's hard for them, what are their hopes and dreams, and the users that they care about, what are their hopes and dreams and what makes them have a bad day. When we just stick to that story, then it's easy to true up where our efforts go and we can create that focus. So, and going back to your team structure, if your team is oriented around certain things they care about and they start off knowing like, these are my 3 KPIs that I care about in the world. These are the 3 numbers I want to move. And they're constantly, like every conversation is coming back to who we're moving that for. What does that look like? Like bring the human into the picture, get away from the code, which is actually getting easier and easier to do as we get more and more used to these tools, because now we don't have to do so much with the code. We can really focus on the problem. And so if you stay focused on the problem, you organize your teams around a very specifically chosen set of problems, you can kind of reduce, like the noise starts coming in and it just bounces right off because it's irrelevant to what you're solving for and what those conversations been about.
Wow. Okay. Ron?
Yeah, if I may, I just want to build off of that because for 2 reasons. Number one, I think a lot of what you just said, Tacita, like kind of aligns very closely with how I think about like running a SaaS or a software business. And I think a lot of that, like you would imagine this to be like you imagine that you would guess that I would say that because I'm a PM. And so yes, a lot of like what you said like resonates with how I think about the PM role. But also, like I think another thing that you said that really resonated with me was that if I understood you correctly, it's like once you're actually closer, your teams are closer to your customer, you really understand what actually matters. And I think a lot of that is something that you could pretend, or what I'm seeing, you can like potentially tie that to like how teams individually think about quality in general. Like, I think as somebody who was like an engineer before being a PM, like I think a lot of my frustration with like traditional quality tooling has been that it was very, I guess, policy driven, or like you can't really question, like there are targets you must hit and they were like quite diverse from like business impact or like some other impact. And I think there is an opportunity to kind of like change that conversation, like with those tooling. So like imagine if you had like tooling that said, for example, like I'm just gonna pick code coverage, for example, that says, hey, like you don't need like a 90% code coverage, but like you really should cover like your payment gateway if you're Wise, for example. I'm sure y'all already do that, by the way. But and you don't necessarily have to have like some other stuff that is like dead code fully covered. I How do y'all think about that, I guess? Or like if I were to like flip that around.
I think it's what you and also what Tasita was describing really resonates to how we build things at Wise. So we figured out that there are like 4 or 5 things that are super important for our customers. It's price, speed, convenience, trust, coverage, so that we are available everywhere in the world. And all of our teams are working on one of these problems. And then we know that these are important to the customers. We obviously listen to the customers and we identify new sub problems. And every single team that we create is created to specifically solve a really good customer problem. But one thing that I really like to use as a litmus test to understand how strong the engineering culture is if you talk to an engineer and you ask them what they're working on, you ask them how they would explain that to a customer. And even if they are working on a really deep like infra change, if the engineering and product culture is really strong at the company, they're going to find a really good argument to convince the customer why it's worth their time and why it's a good investment. And if they don't have an argument, then the question is like, should we really invest into that, right? If we cannot really explain to customers, like, is it worth doing? And I think that the companies who think like this are going to be the ones who emerge as winners in this new age of AI.
That's really interesting too, because in Cutback, it's helping developers advocate for themselves and their connection to business. And hopefully as it goes up, all the way up to CTO advocating, because I do believe we are responsible for our employees. We have a question from an anonymous attendee, which is totally fair. How do you recommend going about selecting the set of problems to treat as signal and first steps to designing the noise out? Can be daunting and can be a daunting end-to-end system design problem. So what are your top tips for breaking it down into manageable chunks?
Give me the first part of that again.
Absolutely. It was a very good but complex question. How do you recommend going about selecting the set of problems to treat as signal and first steps to designing the noise out?
I can maybe attempt to answer this, and then if you all have better answers, then you can interrupt me as well. But the way that I kind of think about, like if I step back and think about like shipping software, and thinking about like where you need quality, there is some kind of things that you want to catch upfront, like before changes make it. And there are some kind of problems like you want to mitigate by just like limiting the blast radius of when you ship in product. And so across every chain of like the pipeline or the life cycle, there are different signals that are worth measuring. And the strat and deciding what to measure like totally depends on, and it goes back to what you were talking about, like totally depends on like the goal of the software that you're trying to ship. And so like if I'm trying to like fail fast validate something like a new product within like my existing customer base, I might just like not choose to measure anything, probably ship something with like very minimal unit tests, maybe some security, but I'll try to like measure features. I'll want to use like feature flags to make sure that I'm only rolling this out to a subset. Um, the stuff that, and so the signals I'm looking for there are different from a database migration to a database migration for like a new feature or an existing feature that is used by billions of customers. And over there, I want to make, and if I'm doing the latter, I want to make sure that I have unit tests running, end-to-end tests running, try to make sure that my schemas don't lead to those schemas are compatible, or if there are breaking changes, I have like some kind of back compat built in or not built in and communicated out. And so over there, the signals I would measure are totally different. So I start with like trying to figure out again the why, like what are we trying to accomplish, and then like figure out like signals that are worth measuring from there.
Okay. As we wind down, I would love to ask, just because we have a lot of engineering leadership on the call, and of course we could have engineers. So if you were to offer advice, what do you think engineers, I know the why, but that's pretty nebulous, respectfully. But read that book. What are some things that engineers could train up on or focus on that would really help them bridge that gap and things? What are you suggesting, or what are you helping do? I think Tacita, bridging the gap between the customer and the servant engineer, maybe we could call them now, is great. What else?
So a little bit relates to what the last question, actually. I think a big culture of tolerating imperfection and remembering that is the only option, that helps us say no to noisy signal. And as you, the engineer, have to have that for yourself. Right now, I honestly think that the most important skill an engineer can develop is stamina and just tolerance for the imperfection, whether it's our own or our teammates. The amount of pressure out there right now and everybody is unprecedented. The go learn everything on Reddit and follow all the YouTube channels, and it's just, and then you've got your teams are all moving probably faster than you. Everybody's moving just it's pressure, whether it's real or we're like perceiving things. I think the most important thing you can do as an engineer is to hold on to your clarity of judgment, and you need to let the noise of there's so much for me to learn fall to the wayside. I don't have all the answers, let it fall to the wayside. So you just like
meditation.
That
what we need.
Whatever you works for you is something that gives you some space to be like, actually, I got this. I just need to give myself space to look at the problem in front of me, and I need to be okay not solving all the problems around me.
That is hard, but that it comes down to, I think, the engineering leadership giving that psychological safety. Balazs, anything to add to that?
I don't want to say the why now, but I really do think that that customer empathy is a big thing, and I really think that it separates, especially if you're in a producty space. It's a very important thing that you understand the customer, you can express your ideas clearly, you can speak to the PM, you can also think like a PM, you can think with the head of your counterparts, and you have perspective. And I still think that technical skills are going to matter, but it's going to be less about the implementation. we will spend much less time arguing about, like lambdas and what is the best way to implement something in Java, because that's just going to be um, like a given that we're going to trust AI with that, I think, in a couple of years. Um, but what I think is going to be really important is good taste when it comes to technical design. And you can only have good taste if you understand the context, like what is the problem that you're really trying to solve, and how do you know if you were successful? So asking the right questions up front, having clarity around this will help you with your technical design.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much. Just to have a teaser, if you didn't join the Lead Dev Slack community yet, we will have a question on there of how do you balance shipping fast versus shipping with quality, maybe slower? Everyone aims for middle ground, but sometimes that's difficult to do. So we'll definitely get into that. Thank you to my esteemed panelists, and thank you to the audience for being such a great audience. This is a journey, just like DevOps or cloud migrations. It's not a light switch. So good luck with it, and take care of yourself, and be okay to learn and not be learning 80 hours a week. Thank you, and have a great day, y'all.